12 years ago, our forefathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all are created equal. We gather here today to consider this proposition. I ask you to reflect today on the work done before, the work at hand, and the work before us, that we may continue to reap the blessings of liberty. For work it is to maintain this republic, and I propose that we are called to do that work. So the theme today is patriotism. Founding fathers, history, 4th of July, but mainly I am looking for reflection from you. And I apologize now if I get emotional, but this is very touching to me. And I want to read these words to you and see how they resonate. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that for these honored dead we take increased devotion for that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion, that we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. As we approach the celebration of our nation's birth, it is only fitting that we consider the value of such an association we maintain in this republic. For our republic was born out of deep discontent with the governance it perceived to suffer under. Indeed, the coming holiday, July 4th, is not the anniversary of independence. That only officially came years later, after war, bloodshed, and treaties. Rather, our 4th of July is the anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, and that is just a statement of intent. I read to you here the initial and familiar words of that intent. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them to another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. I remember reading these words in the following list of grievances. Have you read the Declaration of Independence? It's a long list. The list of grievances against the King of England that justified the act of rebellion. I was in 6th grade. There was a hot classroom in Southern California with Mr. English. That was his name. I truthfully was not impressed with the list of grievances that I didn't seem all that substantial. I encourage you to read them carefully. Number 7 on the list, referring to the King of England. He has endeavored to prevent the population of these states for that purpose, obstructing the laws of naturalization of foreigners, refusing to pass others to encourage their migration hither. Keep in mind that brave 6th grade teacher who was introducing young students to these words of rebellion was in a place in time where our republic was in turmoil. Men just a few years older than me were being drafted to die in Vietnam. Demonstrating college students would soon be shot at Kent State. And riots were incinerating cities across our country: Detroit, Newark, Watts, just north of our suburban town. What keeps a republic? Any group engaged in believing that their governance suits them. What keeps them from rebellion? That is what I am here to ask you today. Can you say this government serves you? Do you have a list of grievances that burden you? Do you feel no recourse but rebellion? Or has this republic, crafted 230 years ago, a structure that still allows you to adhere to your principles? I ask you to consider this today. A rumored and actually documented exchange from 1789 exists that sounds almost like a Facebook post or Twitter exchange occurred. After independence was won, the states chose an initial attempt at governance called the Articles of Confederation. This held states together but gave no power to any authority to make them cooperate. All could see such a loose confederation was failing, so a convention of the states was called to craft a better solution. It was a hot spring and summer in Philadelphia, a stifling hall and bitter discussions. The delegates came and went daily. Imagine a frustrated Benjamin Franklin, doddering, a wobbly old man, leaving the hot and stuffy Independence Hall where the framers had been arguing for the last 3 months. A passing lady asked him, "Dr. Franklin, just what sort of government have you fashioned for us? A monarchy or a republic?" He replied, "Madam, a republic, if you can keep it." He knew, they all knew back then, that this would be hard work. I doubt they envisioned global warming, the internet, or world population of 9 billion people. But they knew people. Just take a look at the Federalist Papers. I've spent this last spring and summer reading 2 important documents I recommend to you, right before your afternoon nap. The Federalist Papers, available online, and the Mueller Report, also available online. They both speak to human greed, frailties, and the rule of law. I won't comment on the Mueller Report, but I strongly encourage you to read it. The Federalist Papers were about persuasion. After the Constitution was drafted and signed by the delegates in Philadelphia, the framers required ratification by state conventions. New York was seen as a hard sell. It was the big dog in commerce, population, and thus power. The proposed Constitution took power away from the states, as had been the framework of the failed Articles of Confederation, and gave it to a central federal government. The Federalist Papers were a series of op-ed pieces written by Hamilton, Madison, and John Jay to broadsheets in the New England area, attempting to convince New Yorkers to support the idea. Here from Federalist 51, there's 80 of them. They're only about 500 to 800 words long. They'll get you to sleep. But they make excellent points. This is from 51. Read what Hamilton says. It is of great importance in a republic not only to guard the society against the oppression of its rulers, but to guard one part of the society against the injustice of the other part. Different interests necessarily exist in different classes of citizens. If a majority be united by a common interest, the rights of the minority will be insecure. The argument the Federalist Papers is making is that we can build a structure, a set of laws we agree to that will direct our different and varied interests to serve the common good. Remember the preamble. For what are we in this republic if we are not a nation of laws? But making laws, good laws that abide our values, our differences, our common good requires work. It requires we choose our representation, observe their behavior, and then vote our disapproval or approval. I fear we are not willing to do that work. Ben Franklin had that fear 232 years ago. Can we keep our republic? I believe we can, but it will take more work than we are currently doing. Too many just don't care. Unitarian Principles endorse the democratic process, but more, I look to the first principle for guidance in governance: worth and dignity of every person. There were times early in my career as an elected state senator I dreaded casting a vote. Some bills were clearly designated to draw a line for the voters and would not affect the citizens, since they would be found unconstitutional. In my first year, an abortion bill, the fetal pain one, was coming to a vote. I could see what the proponents were doing. They were building a haystack of multiple states' bills passed by legislators that would be overturned, but they were hoping the haystack would break the camel's back. It would pass in this red state, and it would be struck down. I was so troubled by what I considered a disrespectful bill. I toyed with walking out on the vote to express my disgust, though it would have accomplished little. I shared my fancy with a colleague. He strongly advised against it. Dan, you are here to represent your constituents, and your vote is critical to them. It's why they sent you here. He was saying that by me skipping the vote, I would not be treating my constituents with the worth and dignity they deserved. He was right. I voted. And I grew to respect and relish the duty and work of representation. But it is very hard work, and I encourage you to try it whenever you can. Of the people, by the people, for the people. Lincoln was a special man. I believe what made him special was his ability to see a goal and do the work he needed to do to accomplish that goal. Such work often required compromise. Sometimes it required blood. When it was the blood of others, he felt the loss himself. But he did not flinch at the requirements. We all know the toll that took on him. Indeed, the toll it took on our nation. We still suffer this. But Lincoln stole a good turn of phrase when he needed to. I'll tell you where he got this famous one. Lincoln was a lawyer in Springfield, Illinois, the frontier of our country in the 1840s. His junior law partner, a persuasive friend, William Herndon, returned from a visit to Boston in 1858 with copies of sermons he had attended. One was by the Unitarian minister Theodore Parker, who spoke for much longer than I will speak today about the burning topic and moral stain on our country of the day, slavery and abolition. Parker spoke strongly and often for abolition, as most Unitarians did. Full disclosure, Parker actually stole this phrase from John Wycliffe, who wrote it in a 1384 Bible translation dedication. Today we might call this a meme. It's telling that it took 200 years for the ideas to bounce around the world, and today it's just minutes. Herndon, Lincoln's law partner, noted that Lincoln penciled next to the phrase in the margins of the sermon. So when it appears in the Gettysburg Address, the link to Unitarians is clear. That government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. We have much work before us to maintain this republic. We have societal problems to solve and budgets to balance. Our founders knew we were just people, not special, of course, with different interests and of different classes. But they believed as I do. We were then and now are equal to the task. May we know the worth and dignity of all as we work to form a more perfect union, establish justice, promote the general welfare, to secure the blessings of liberty for us and posterity. May it be so. Amen.